Greetings from Indianapolis. At just 18 months old, Nick Ackerman lost both legs to meningitis. And despite that, he went on to win the wrestling national championship while attending Simpson College. He also became the first and only Division III athlete to receive the Hodge Trophy, wrestling's version of the Heisman. After his championship win, Nick's story gained national attention. A man who'd recently lost his leg in a motorcycle accident saw Nick featured in the news. He was struggling and unsure where to turn, so he just picked up the phone and called Nick. That conversation became a turning point for how Nick would spend the rest of his life. I'm Wynn Smiley, and this is the ATO Show. So, Nick, thanks for taking the time to be with us today. Losing your legs at 18 months, you probably never even knew a time when that wasn't normal to you, correct?
Yeah. So, when you lose them at 18 months old, that's all you know, and you grow up that way. And that's kind of my own normal. So this walking around on my knees and doing everything I did on prosthetic legs is all I know. So yeah, it's not a big deal to me anymore.
Right. And so sports then, was that just sort of a natural thing because other kids in your family were part of that, and so you were drawn to that, or did you just have a sense that you wanted to do something in sports and figure out what you were good at?
Yeah, I think our family is pretty competitive. I have one older brother. He was a All-American college basketball player. We lived in the house together, and he's 2 years older and was absolutely a role model to me. My dad was a good basketball player, and we were always kind of looking to excel in something that is challenging and competitive. And I've played every sport growing up. You baseball and soccer and ran track even, and all that stuff led me to and gravitated to something that I wouldn't even say I found success in right away, but I really enjoyed.
How important was it that your parents didn't? I mean, if you think about somebody in your situation where it lost their legs at such a young age and then knew that it was potentially going to be definitely a different kind of life and tougher in many ways, that they would sort of let you just sort of, skim by, not really press you because you're already facing such hardships. And I'm guessing that wasn't the case as it related to your growing up. Uh, what do you attribute, or how do you attribute the impact that had on just your ability to have the success, especially in sports, but in other parts of life as well?
Yeah, for sure. So uh, honestly, and like many, I attribute almost all of my success to my parents, right? I have said in other interviews and other places that I was blessed with unsympathetic parents. And there was never a feeling bad for me or a sympathy or a protection. There was no helicopter parenting. It was, I remember my mom would go to the school every year and she would sit down with the teachers and she would introduce me to the class. And this is Nicholas, and he doesn't have legs and he lost when he was a baby. And it really set the groundwork for friends and people that didn't know me to say, wow, that's kind of cool, instead of, oh, that's different and let's make fun of it. So it really, they essentially kind of broke the crust, allowed me to be my own kid, and then expected a lot. It was, we spent a lot of time in the outdoors. So if we were going hunting, pheasant hunting on a Saturday, you were expected to walk all day, and, mom would have lunch, but you could sit at the truck if you want to, but it's a lot more fun to walk the field. So let's figure it out. So, yeah, there was very little sympathy, and it doesn't mean there wasn't compassion there. It just means there was, a high expectation put on you, and not in a pushy way, just in a, let's go, you can do this. Even though I'm sure behind the scenes it was difficult. It would have been easy for him to pick you up and coddle you and kind of protect you from, something that might be difficult, but they absolutely didn't. And that is the biggest blessing that I've had in my life.
I'm sure you've thought about this, but growing up in a small community, small school, versus had you grown up in a larger community, a larger school, how do you think that the small town, small school uh, culture and just sort of being a part of that impacted you and your willingness to continue to press ahead?
Yeah, so everybody knows everybody, right? When you're in a small town, and now we're in one, everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows everything about everybody. And this is prior to social media and Facebook, right? My high school wrestling coach, who I went to dinner with a couple weeks ago, was inducted into the Athletic AD Hall of Fame recently here in Iowa. And I met him about the first week I moved to the Colfax Mingo area. My parents did when I was in first grade. And he managed the pool in the summer as a teacher and a coach. And he remembers me as, a 5-year-old walking in the pool on my knees and climbing to the top of the high dive and jumping off, and him thinking, oh boy, turns out he becomes my high school wrestling coach. And then now I went to dinner with him, like I said, a couple weeks ago, a great mentor and friend in my life. But that small school, small group, kind of, lended itself to giving me an opportunity, right? These people that were, they knew me, they knew my brother, they knew our family, and kind of accepted us as outsiders somewhat in Colfax when we first moved there and when I was really young. But yeah, everybody was, it was the opposite of getting bullied, if that makes sense. I don't know how to say that. Like, it was like, yeah, come on in. Like, how do we, come join the swim team, come, join the wrestling team. Like, it was a really neat environment and another real blessing to be a part of.
I always tell guys in chapters, especially when they're almost exclusively recruiting from major high schools, suburbs, major cities, that it's really important for the health of the chapter if they get a handful, doesn't take very many, but a handful of guys from small towns that aren't part of the big suburban high school type of environment. And I've got lots of theories on why that makes a big difference for the chapter's culture. But it does make a difference. Any thoughts on that based on the fact that you
Yeah.
came from a small town?
Yeah, I think so. So, I think what made our house really exciting and interesting to me, which is like this in everything we do, and what makes a culture good is a lot of diversity, right? And diversity doesn't have to be a skin color or anything. It has to do with, socioeconomical places, educational backgrounds. If you're from big school, small school, like this diversity of how we grew up is what helps us grow. We had plenty of guys in our house that had completely different backgrounds, and I tell the story of my college roommate who is Korean and ethnicity, and we end up in the same house wrestling really close weight. He's 65, I'm 74 pounder, and turns out he grew up in the house right next to me in Des Moines. And you're not that different, right? Like you're all really pretty similar. And I grew up in Colfax, but when I was up till 5 years old, we grew up in houses right next to each other. And we didn't even know it at the time. In college, we find out, I tell him, hey, I grew up in this house down this street in Des Moines. He's like, oh yeah, where's that? We drove down it. I point to it. And he's like, Nick, I grew up in that house. And I was like, what? And I called my mom and I said, hey, who was the Korean family that lived next door to us? And, I said, Chu and Kim. And who are her kids? Sammy and Justin. I said, who's my roommate? Justin. I'm like, holy cow. And, goes to one of the biggest high schools in Des Moines, has, well more experience culturally than I did coming from Colfax. But now we're living in the same room, in the same house, wrestling on the same team. And I've learned so much from that guy. And there's so much value in having that spectrum of people. Like I said, small town, big town, rich kids, poor kids, like, there's a lot of value in all of it,
Yeah, definitely makes a difference. So let's talk about the wrestling trajectory here for a couple of minutes. So Why have you didn't initially have success in wrestling, but then obviously you had great success. What happened? Where can you identify the tipping point in which you said, "Hey, I'm good at this, and I feel like I'm getting better," as opposed to struggling in the beginning?
Yeah. So I started in fourth grade and I was terrible. I tried to wrestle with legs and I was terrible. Uh, I would kick my legs off as I was losing and be like, oh, my leg's falling off. And they would, stop the match. And after about the third time, they're like, buddy, you're just getting pinned. You're done. And that was how it was. And in fact, my mom will tell you she would hope that I got pinned in the first period. So I didn't, have to get beat on for all three periods of a wrestling match. Again, small town high school coach, friends. You wrestled because your buddies were doing it, right? Like, oh, our friends are wrestling, let's go wrestle. And even though you weren't good, you started finding some success. And uh, what you realized is the harder you worked, the more success you would find, which isn't a big secret. But for a kid growing up, to realize that for themselves instead of somebody telling them that is pretty powerful. So the sooner you can learn that, the better off you'll be. But uh, I started finding success probably between my sophomore and junior year in high school. And that was because I was old enough to work a job, and I worked for local pig farmers, um, and baled a lot of hay and lifted a lot of pigs, you got really strong, weaning pigs and working, shoveling manure and all that stuff. And so this maturing physically, but also getting incredibly strong, um, through that sophomore, junior, senior year in high school really led to more success, right? Like start getting stronger, you start figuring some things out. And just enough mat time, you figure out how to stay out of bad positions. There's things that I don't do very well. And if I just avoid those scenarios, I could have a chance to win versus getting caught in those scenarios. So, it mid high school, I started figuring those things out. And my coaches that gave me the opportunity to come in and fail for so many years, watching this kid struggle is a testament to their patience. And then, when you start figuring it out, you start having success. And then, of course, going into college after high school, my senior year in high school, I qualified for the state tournament, first round of the state tournament, broke my arm in a match. And he was like, I think the number 2 kid in the state. And I ended up beating him, even with a broken arm, and went on to win another match and then lost in the semis and then lost on the backside for 6th place. So being that close to really good high level success was really good, but also really, made me very hungry. So then it was like, I knew I wasn't done wrestling, and Simpson College gave me an opportunity to continue that. They saw something at that state tournament and they talked to me before the state tournament, but they saw something that was like, man, this kid's got some sort of weird drive that we'd like to have on our team. So was fortunate that they gave me an opportunity as well.
Simpson was the only college to talk to you? Was that your only option at that point?
No, there was a few other options, all small school stuff, D3, NAIA schools, I knew coming from a small town, I wasn't going to go to a big college. I know myself and I know what I need. And, and that is that kind of small network of people. I'd get lost in a big school. I just know I would. I'd probably make some bad choices and, probably get lost in the system and not show up to class or not show up to practice or something like that. So I knew what I needed. And the fact that my brother was already at Simpson College, and it made sense for a lot of reasons.
And so your freshman year at Simpson wasn't great. Did you ever at any point say, you know what, I think I want to do something else. This isn't quite worth it. Obviously, you didn't choose that because you went on to win the national championship in subsequent years. But how hard was it when you were a freshman and struggling a little bit in wrestling that you to just keep going?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it was hard. There were days where I don't know that I'd ever say I thought about quitting. Um, my brain's wired a little different, I think, than most. And I realize that now, 20 years after college or more. Um, I'm a pretty resilient person, like in general, I can get really fired up. I got a really high passion level that often gets mistaken for anger or something. I'm like, oh, why aren't we doing this better? Just expect a high expectation. But when it doesn't
Sure.
happen, I'm not discouraged. I'm like, how are we going to figure it out? Right. Like, so it was the same thing in the wrestling world. Like, man, I'd lose a lot my freshman year. I was behind a 4-time high school state champ who ended up being a national champ at Simpson College. And he used to beat the tar out of me. Then these guys were all juniors and seniors. And I think at that time they were the number 5. They got 5th in the nation that year, and all really good, mature, strong wrestlers. And they beat the tar out of me every day for 2 years. And I mean that lovingly. I mean, these guys are friends of mine today, and they're wonderful humans. And now our kids, we watch our kids wrestle, but I mean, they'll tell you, they would beat the tar out of me, and I'd be against the wall on the mat, like leaned up there, and they'd walk away, and I'd get up and walk back towards them on my knees. Like, all right, here we go again. I'll walk head first right back into the kind of fire every single time, knowing that it's probably not going to work out well, but, maybe too bullheaded to not.
And so then in 2001, you won the national championship. Did that change your life? And if it did, how did it change your life?
Yeah. So, I would say going into college and even my first 2 or 3 years, wrestling at the Division III level, nobody had a mark on my name or my head that said, man, this kid, if he keeps going the way he's going, he could do it. Like he's got something, and he's going to probably do something really great. In fact, maybe the opposite. Maybe most people thought, man, he needs to hang it up at some point. That never really dissuaded me or thought differently. You go into the national tournament, and I think I was the number 5 or 7 ranked guy in the country at that time. I remember halfway through my senior year not being ranked at all. And we were in Florida, and I told one of the guys that was in the ranking committee, I said, you need to come watch the next couple matches. And I was wrestling like a ranked guy, like number 6 or 7 guy in the country at the time. And I was on fire. I was really feeling good. And I said, you need to come watch this. You think he's good. And I just destroyed the guy. Right. So, he gets done, and, he's like, yeah, you look pretty good. We'll have to talk about it. And so a few weeks later, you're, ranked number 7 or whatever I came in at. But winning the national title, was something that was, I think, again, my brain is wired different. And I used to repeat in the mirror hundreds and hundreds of times, like national champ. I'd brush my teeth and say national champ. And, in the weight room lifting, look in the mirror, just in your own eyes, national champ. And I just brush my teeth. And the first several hundred times, it's funny. And you're like, you haven't even qualified for the national tournament. What are you thinking you can even go, let alone win it? This is after my junior year when I was so close to qualifying. And, but after several hundred times, you start believing what you're telling yourself. And the people around you see it, and the people around you start believing it. Like, man, this guy's possessed. He's really on a different planet right now. And you're beating people that are really good, and you believe it. And then all of a sudden they start believing it. And so by the time I got to that national final match, like, it's a 2-day tournament. And at the first day in the quarterfinal match, I had to wrestle Rob Murray, who's from Loris, and he'd beat me twice 2 weeks before. He beat me at the conference duels and the conference finals, both by a point, like 3-4 and 2-3 or something like that. And I had to wrestle him in the quarterfinals of the national tournament the first day, and I lost, and I beat him 2-1, took him down with like 12 seconds left. He had a riding time point, and I ended up taking him down with 10 or 12 seconds left to beat him. And I was probably as excited about winning that match as I was in national finals. And, cause it was just a redemption. Like, gosh, I knew I could beat him, and I knew it. And he's kind of had my number for the previous 2 matches. And so then you go to the next day of the tournament, and then you're in the national finals, and you are against the number 1 guy in the nation. It was 63-0, undefeated, from Augsburg. Is a powerhouse wrestling school. And, and he was huge. I mean, I remember looking at them across the mat. Again, how my brain works. My coach would shake my hand and kind of slap me in the face, Coach Peterson. Nobody beats Nick Ackerman, because he knew I knew that. He knew the odds were, I thought. And so he'd say that to kind of reinforce it. And I'd turn and walk out to the center of the mat. And I remember turning and looking at him, and his ankles were down here and his shoulders were up here. And I was like, holy cow, he is a big dude. And I started laughing, like laughing to myself, walking out to the center of the mat. Like, this is going to be fun. Here we go. Like where else would you rather be? Zero fear, zero hesitation, just like, let's roll, let's go.
The atmosphere there had to just be electric. I mean, the crowd had to be just going nuts.
Yeah, it was standing ovation, and it was crazy. Everybody's screaming and yelling. My buddies from high school, my high school coaches there, everybody from my, hometown that I grew up with, that I was friends with, and, my college. And it was an awesome atmosphere. And your wrestling success doesn't define who you are. And it was like, yeah, I expected to win it. Like, that's if I would have lost, I would have still expected to win that match, but just didn't work out that day. But fortunately I did. And, it was awesome. Like we had a great time, and we, being able to share this idea that, kind of silent limitations that are put on people are just in their own head and are a product of their own kind of bad programming is what I've really been able to do the last 25 years. Take off those barriers that you're putting on yourself mentally and physically, and go to work and make it happen.
Yeah. So some college athletes who have great success, especially, have a hard transition post-graduation if they don't continue in their particular sport. Was that a difficult transition for you? How did you manage and navigate going from those heights in college to graduation and being done with wrestling?
Yeah, it's tough. You're a competitor first and foremost. You're a wrestler. You're all these things that you've been for the last 14 or 15 years of your life. Committed, hundreds and thousands of hours to a craft, and to a room, and to a culture of a sport. I was about 2 months away from graduation when I won the national title, and I have an environmental science major, and I get a call. I was, a bunch of publications, from USA Today to the Today Show, all that stuff that they, that besides the local stuff, of course, but like all this national news and all this press stuff, and really cool. I didn't get it. I would often blow off reporters, like, you can ask me the same questions. And this is not a big deal. Like, just go, like, but one guy called me, a recent amputee from Texas, that was in a car wreck and lost a leg, and saw it on USA Today and a newspaper article a family member brought to him about this kid with no legs that wins a national title. And so he somehow gets a hold of me and gets my phone number, and he calls me, and we talk for hours, and I get off the phone, and we talked a couple different times over the course of a couple weeks. And I remember one of the times getting off the phone, telling Song, my roommate, I said, man, got to make his legs. I got to do something else. So this transition from wrestling to what do you want to do with the rest of your life changes from, environmental science, I'm going to be a park ranger or a fishing game warden, something in the outdoors, to working in an office setting here. And that seems terrible to me at the time. I have to dress up and, be in an office indoors every day. That sounds awful. But now, and even then, I went back to school and rededicated to a new career of prosthetics, and went back to Northwestern in Chicago. Had to take some more classes there because my undergrad degree didn't support grad school in prosthetics. So I took some classes, got into grad school at Northwestern, and then became certified in prosthetics in 2004. And what really is cool is that same drive of wrestling, or that kind of same boneheaded, like keep driving, keep figuring it out now applies today in patient care. Man, there are tough cases and there are struggles and there are things that don't go well for patients, and the ability to keep working through failures or shortcomings is I think what makes you successful today.
So have you worked with young kids that would have been in sort of a similar situation that you grew up with
Mhm.
in the course of your work, or working with all types and sizes?
All types and sizes, right? So you kind of grow the garden you water, right? Um, I tend to have a lot of pediatric patients, or several. I have some athletes, some young guys and gals that are really, motivated. But we have a lot of patients that are just like grandma and grandpa that lost their leg for one reason or another, that are just as much fun to work with as, this pediatric patient that's, jogging up and down the hallway and reminding me of myself, man, look at that little guy run, so those are really kind of cool ones to work with. But, the reality is every time we get to do what we do, it's really exciting and it's really like rewarding is maybe an understatement. But it's pretty cool what we do every day. So.
Do you see consistencies in the folks that are in rehab as it relates to how they react, if they're motivated, if they go into depression, if they whatever the evolution, I suppose, of is their rehab? Are there similarities that you see regardless of the age or the situation?
Yeah, I somewhat. Uh, everybody's struggling and everybody's, kind of fighting their own fight. It's kind of a weird thing to think about, all amputees are the same, or like, oh, like people will say it to me and they're like, I'm so glad that my prosthetist is missing their legs too, because it makes me feel good that you know what I'm going through. And I'll tell them the first thing I say is, I don't know what you're going through. I never lost legs. Like I've never had them. So like I make it really clear that, although I can feel what they feel and I can know what when they talk about a socket feeling like this, I know what they're saying. But mentally, cognitively, how they're dealing with the emotions of loss of a limb and a difference in their lifestyle and how they do work and how they play with their kids or how they do a particular sport when they used to do it with 2 feet or 2 hands is something that I've never experienced, right? So I want to be really clear with them that, although we might look similar, that we're both missing legs, that it's just like wearing glasses, man. It doesn't define who you are. It's that there's no two that are the same, and their experience is different than others, man. I get a I get a real kick out of, and I mean, I don't know how that's not the right way to say it, but like I really enjoy helping people work through the mental side of their loss. Like some tough love. It allows me to be a little probably tougher than my colleagues that are able-bodied, right? Like I can tell them they need to get their ass up and let's get walking, a little bit better than others can, because they say, oh, you don't know what I'm dealing with. I go, "Yeah, well, yeah, sure I don't." But, so it allows me to kind of say those things,
Right.
but,
Yeah.
I get a kick out of that, man, because that is how we get to the next level, and everybody's at a level. And how do we get to the next one or maintain that one as long as we can? How can we stay active and stay productive and stay at a high level as long as we can stay there?
Well, and I would think because of everything that you overcame, even though you didn't realize what it was like to have legs, you still overcame incredible situations. And I would think that that would, in and of itself, be an inspiration for the people that you're working with. They know in their brain, right, that you have been successful and were able to find a path forward based on hard work. So surely that has to be somewhat of a motivation for them as they're going through their own situation.
Yeah, I think so. That's a hard place to, you know, tell me somebody that says, "Hey, look how good I'm doing. You should be able to do that good." Uh, that's a
Right.
successful
But you don't
conversation.
have to say that, right? They know
Yeah.
it, right? You don't have to say anything, right?
Yeah. Well, and honestly, that was my mom's advice. I remember when the Des Moines Register came to our house and wanted to do this follow-up story. It was post winning the national title before I moved to the Quad Cities to start working, then go to Northwestern. Uh, and I told the guy I wasn't home, or I said something. I said, I'm not seeing him. I'm not, I don't care. He's, and I was, what do they say? Young and brash, right? Like my mom sat me down. She's like, Nick, she's like, you think they want to hear something special and they don't want to hear anything. They just want to somehow get a piece of whatever you have. They want to see whatever you're doing. You don't have to say anything special. Just
Right.
answer the questions and listen, and you're going to help somebody you don't even know you're going to help. And that's what you really realize, is that it's I don't know, aura is not the right word. It's like this kid from Texas that called me, who I've never met in my life. I don't even know if he really exists. It might've been some sort of like, angel or something. I don't know what that's how I go that far, but, uh, he just needed somebody to do something. Like he just needed to, he'd ask about girls, like, what do girls think about that? You're 20 years old. Like that's all you think about are girls. And I said, I don't care. Like, I could care less. My girlfriend's beautiful. Like, what do you want? Like, what are you talking about? Like, but that has nothing to do with physical. That's all a mental perception, and that's all how you see yourself and your confidence, or your whatever. They see that more than they see anything else. So, I think my patients see that. I think they see
Sure.
this don't give a shit attitude about the small stuff. Work hard. Yeah, shoot, man, I got to get back in the gym. I got to do this. I got to do that. Yeah, we got to deal with some stuff, but let's not make it a big deal. Let's move on.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that you speak to a variety of groups, sports teams, whatnot. As just your story is fascinating, your story is motivating, and telling it would be motivating. I'm curious that people that come up to you and talk to you afterwards, what kind of questions do they have? What have you noticed in terms of how people engage you?
It's a good question. I don't know that I've been asked that one too many times, or anything quite specific like that. If I've got a pattern of what people ask me. Um,
Or what stands out?
yeah, I don't know. It's always fascinating, the conversations and comments, or not comments. I don't mean they're like, they're like, was it a hindrance or was it a benefit to not have legs, and wrestle? Like, gosh, you're bigger. Like those conversations are always fun to have with people. It's no different than the Olympic runner that was missing both of his legs. Everybody want to say, well, he's got the advantage because he's got these big carbon fiber springs. It's just like naiveness, right? Like you just don't know.
Right.
And so those conversations are always interesting and fun, to have, and enlighten people on what it's really like and what it really takes. And it really has more to do with the individual than it does their particular, generality of their circumstance. But, um, I love connecting with people. I mean, I do it all day, every day. I get to talk to them. I know them well. Getting to know people and connect is really what kind of fills my bucket.
Yeah, do you notice a shift over the years, especially when you're talking to, like, I don't know, high school athletes or college athletes, over, um, it's been 25 years, 24 years since you won the national championship. And have you noticed a shift in sort of attitude or how people respond to you, at that level, at that high school or college level as the years have gone by?
Only that they were like 1 year old when I won it.
Right,
It's the
right.
most depressing thing ever. How old were you in 2001? Like, oh,
Yeah.
I wasn't born. Oh, sweet. Uh, so that sucks. But, you know, sometimes they, like they didn't see me. They didn't see all the newspaper articles. They didn't see all the
Right.
TV shows. They didn't see any of the stuff about it. Right. So it's like, it happened, but it's like, history. And for a kid, they don't really understand it. So I was talking to a group of wrestlers a few weeks ago in a practice room, and they were in town from Tennessee. Their coach brought them up. Their coach is from Iowa. And so they brought them up to this room where my son was wrestling, getting ready for the national duels. And I happened to just be there. Brought my son there. I wasn't coaching. He was just in a room working out with these kids. And afterwards, he said, "Hey, can you talk to my kids that I brought up?" This guy knows, he's my age. He knows my story. He knows everything about me, probably more than I know.
Yeah.
But he's like, "I want you to talk to my kids." I'm like, "What am I going to do? I look like an old dude that's going to stand in a polo and khakis talking to him about how tough I was." Like, what the hell does that mean? Like, what do they want? What am I going to tell? But what it really is a not secret of what I always break down into three things. I tell them, you have to believe in yourself. You have to have this weird, crazy belief in yourself, and it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. So you got to believe, you got to work incredibly hard. I mean, harder than you think you need to work. You need to put that time in and that work in. And then you have to surround yourself with exceptional people. Right. I sometimes put in, it depends on the person, but sometimes I put in, you can't complain. Like, nobody wants a complainer. Nobody, it's terrible. Like, just don't. So you got to surround yourself with really good people. You got to believe in yourself, and you got to work incredibly hard without complaining. Don't tell people how hard you're working. Nobody cares about that. So I tell these kids this, and I'm wearing, khakis and, polo or button-up shirt or something, and standing on the side of the wrestling mat, So I'm talking to them, and their coach is like, "Well, and he did it on his knees." And they're like, "Why would he wrestle on his knees?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah." And so I pull up my pant leg and I show them my legs, and then it's like, "Whoa, like what just happened?"
Right.
Yeah.
Especially for little kids like that, what a huge gift for the rest of their lives to be able to look at something differently than most people look at because of that experience.
Yeah. And it can go two ways, right? I tell patients that all the time. If you're an asshole in that room, in that Hy-Vee or in that grocery store, when that kid asks you how you lost, what about your legs? And why is he staring at me? He's going to think that every guy that is missing his legs is mean, or don't ask him, don't say anything. So I said, you have a bit of a responsibility to just be nice and a good human and answer their questions, because they're just curious, and they're not looking at you because they think you're weird. They're looking at it because they're amazed. They're like, "What is going on there? That is way cool," So.
Right. Well, Nick, thank you again for taking time to share your story once again. And I think that the lessons that you experienced and demonstrate obviously apply to anything. And I think it's a great message for everybody, but I think especially for ATOs in this particular case, because you are an ATO and you had the fraternity experience as well, that it really can resonate with college men who are trying to figure it out and run ATO chapters. So very much appreciate your time.
Yeah, you bet, man. If I could say one last thing, man, our fellow brother Jay Byers has been in the news a lot lately, and I thought the world of him, and he was a resource for me locally as working in the business world in Des Moines, and always answered the phone, always, "Hey, what do you need, Nick? What can I help you with?" And he's going to be greatly missed by a bunch of ATOs and a bunch of people, and his daughters as well, and wife. So I think we'd be remiss without mentioning Mr. Byers, because he's one of a kind, and was a big part of a lot of people's lives.
Absolutely. Prayers for his wife and daughters. Jay served the national level. He served on the National Fraternity Board for 8 years. So just lost a great leader and a good friend. It's tragic.
Yeah, bad deal.
Yep, absolutely. Nick, again, thank you so much, and have a great rest of the week.
Yeah, you do the same. Thanks so much.
Take care.